Hello, my friend. On today's episode, I have a brand new guest. First time on the podcast, it's Billy Hofacker. He is the founder of YourFitnessMoneyCoach.com. And Billy's work is so incredible because he helps gym owners find financial freedom. So, for those of you who maybe do a good job of running your finances for your gym, but don't do a great job of running your personal finances, Billy is a great resource for you. And so we walk through all of his best practices and tips for folks who are maybe just starting out and opening a gym in the first few years. And he gives some great advice for folks who are maybe towards the end of their fitness owning career and are looking towards retirement and are trying to invest. So if you're trying to get your financial house in order, this is a great episode for you. Keep on listening. Hello, fitness business nerds. What's up? Welcome to another episode of the Business for Unicorns podcast. I'm very excited for a brand new guest on the podcast for the first time. It's Billy Hofacker, who is the founder of YourFitnessMoneyCoach.com. And this man is doing incredibly important work of helping gym owners find financial freedom, increase their profit margins so they can get back to doing the job in this industry they love. And I'm so excited to have you on the podcast today, Billy. So welcome.
Michael, thank you so much for having me. I couldn't sleep this entire weekend because I knew that we're recording this on Monday morning, and I was so excited to have a conversation with you.
I know I've just said before we started recording, I've heard your name several times over the years. I know you've owned a gym in New York City,
Hmm.
still do, and
Hmm.
but we've never met before. So it's a real treat for
Exactly.
me. And I'm also just so inspired by the work you're doing because, a lot of our Unicorn City members come to us also wanting help with their
Hmm.
finances. But often we don't get to talk that much about their personal finances. And that's a
Hmm.
really important focus. So I'm excited to have you on and pick your brain. So for those of my listeners who are maybe discovering you for the first time,
Hmm.
maybe give us, your 1 or 2 minute life story. How'd you get to this place where you're helping gym owners with their finances?
Yeah, it's kind of an easy one because I like to say I had my sort of awakening, my first awakening. I've had several. This was going back to around 2010. I was newly married to Melissa. She was and is the woman of my dreams, and we're still married, about to be 16 years next week or
Wow.
so. And we were starting our lives together. I was working as a fitness coach, just like many of you, and I was doing work that I loved. I was helping people get in better shape, feel better about themselves. In a lot of ways, I felt like I was living the dream.
Mm,
One day, as I'm living this dream, I'm getting ready for work. By the way, we're about to start our family. That's important
hmm.
here. I get a knock on the door. I walk down my steps, open my door, and to my surprise, there's a muscular bald dude with a thick goatee,
Oh no.
tattoos all over his neck, piercings everywhere, bald head. I look past him. I see my brand new, not my supercar, but my brand new white Honda Accord hooked up to his tow truck. That's when he looked at me with his thick Long Island accent. He says, "I'm Tony, and I'm here to repossess your car for delinquent payments."
Wow.
I I froze. I just literally couldn't process what was happening. It was a mixture of fear, surprise,
Hmm.
embarrassment. What if my neighbors see? What am I going to tell my wife who's just sitting inside? What is happening? Tony, please unhook the car from your tow truck. I have some money inside. I don't know how this happened. I'm sorry. I'll take care of it. Tony happened to be a really sweet guy, and he explained to me
Yeah.
that he was not able to unhook the car. That's the way it works. They hook the car up prior to knocking on the door so they don't
Of
feel bad
course.
for
Tony's
a
got a
guy like
plan.
me.
Yeah.
Exactly. As Tony speeds off with my car hooked up to his, I realized my life was not quite what I thought it was. It was a little bit
Hmm.
of a house of cards.
Yeah.
Side note, you talked about the idea of the personal side. All of this, so this led to the whole discovery. We realized that we were just a little bit in debt. We had $130,000 of non-mortgage debt outside of the house.
Mm.
130,000. It was all types of debt. How did it
Yep.
happen? I'm kind of speeding through some of it because these are the common questions. Like, what's wrong with you? Like, how did you get into so much debt? It's like,
It happens
yeah,
quick. It happens
yeah,
quickly. Yeah.
exactly. Yeah. So we realized we were in a lot of trouble. We had to make a lot of change. But I will say that all of that, I'm assuming you want to hear the rest of the story. all of that was from prior things. That wasn't from the brick and mortar locations that I owned and own in New York. That was all from business, but it was like a different
Sure.
sort of different type of business. It was
Yeah.
more in contracting and at home training. And I actually had a gym in my home where I would train clients and other types of things.
Sure. Yeah.
That's the
Yeah.
start of
Well,
it. And
listen, Billy, I appreciate you sharing that. And I think you're not alone. There's so many folks out there that are, just a few wrong choices from Tony
mm-hmm,
showing up at their door, right?
yep,
There's just a few wrong choices. I mean, we talk to Unicorn Society members all the time who realize, oh, I just got this huge tax bill I wasn't expecting. I was saving for
yep,
taxes, but this is twice as much. Or my
mm-hmm,
rent, my landlord just decided to hike up my rent 50%. I can't
mm-hmm,
actually pay that, right? And so whether it's a series of choices you've made over years or side projects and experiments as an entrepreneur, right?
mm-hmm,
There's so many
yep,
ways to accumulate debt, and it can be a real burden. So I appreciate you sharing that because I think it's helpful to kind of normalize that does happen a lot.
mm-hmm,
People think that once you open a business, once you're an entrepreneur, you don't have to worry about that anymore. Cash is going to be flowing all the time. That's just not the case. And most people, I think you talk about this a lot in some of the material I was reading of yours. But most people get into fitness not because they want to be rich. They want to make a
mm-hmm,
good living, but they really get into
mm-hmm,
it because they want to help people. And we hear that all the time from our podcast listeners. That's really why they're there. They want to get paid well and be able to retire, but they didn't get into it to be rich because if they wanted to be rich, they picked the wrong industry. They picked the wrong one. So let's keep going with the story. So talk a little bit about what did you wind up putting in place? What are some of the new habits you formed, processes you created for yourself that help you get back on track?
the biggest difference is, and this is kind of the cheesy answer that I guess a lot of people say, but it's a cliche in a lot of ways, and it's
Yeah.
true. And that is, we had to switch our mindset. We
Hmm.
had to make a decision. I think that's the most important thing that we did. We just drew a line in the sand and said, no more. This is just the opposite of what I want. It's the opposite of what my wife wanted. There was a lot to follow, a lot of hard things that we had to go through, but it started with that initial decision. It's that, and when you were talking just now and you were saying how most of us didn't get into this for the money, I agree 100%. And as you guys know, this is the work that you're doing. Yeah,
Yep.
you can make a really good living. You can build wealth. You can gain financial freedom. I'm living proof of
Yes.
that as our
Yes.
clients, and same for you guys. So that was the most important thing. There's lots of things we did. I actually have a book that I know we can share, and where I talked about
Great.
some of the different steps I went through. But I'll just kind of rattle some of them off, and if you want to go through
Yeah.
any of
Well,
them,
actually, is it okay
yeah,
if I do this? Because I really wanted
yeah,
to ask you questions on behalf of we really have kind of two groups of listeners when it comes
mm-hmm,
to kind of where they are financially. We have some
mm-hmm,
listeners on this podcast who are really just starting in their first year or two of running a gym. And for them,
mm-hmm,
the cash flow isn't as high, but they're at that place now where they're impressionable. They want to create some good habits. So I want to just
yeah,
talk to that person for a little while. And then also
yep.
we have some listeners who've been doing this for a long ass time who do have lots of cash flow coming in and have started to save, and maybe retirement is on the horizon for them. So I want to talk to that person too. So for the people who are just getting started and just forming some new healthy habits with just a little bit of money, right? They're just maybe in the first year or two. What are some tips you have for folks at that stage of their career?
I would say that if that's the position that you're in a lot of ways, I would be thankful for that, because you have an opportunity to be in front of a blank canvas, and now you
Hmm.
could sort of paint the picture for your future. Another cheesy answer, I would encourage you to decide where you want to go. There's a book I'm reading
Hmm.
right now by the Heath brothers called Switch, a really interesting
Hmm.
book about how to switch your behavior and change. And it's
Sure.
hard, and we know that. But one of the
Yeah.
things they talk about is they call it a postcard. Essentially, it's where are we going? What does that vision that we're moving closer to look like? So now we can back all of that out. And that's the sort of the big picture, fuzzy, cloudy answer. But to get more specific, there are certain habits that will serve you well, whether you're at that stage or you kind of miss some of this stuff as you went further along. One of those, and one of the most common things, I work with 95% fitness entrepreneurs. There are others in other industries, and it's not just our industry, it's all industries, lots of small business owners. There's a spectrum. On one end, there's the business owner who is completely co-mingling all their finances. They're not
Yes.
really looking at it like a real business. They
Yes.
know that they have some personal expenses. They know they have some clients. I can take this money here to pay this. I can pull this money there to do that. And with that sort of approach, there's a couple of problems with that. And one of them is it is not success leaves clues, and it is not a professional way to do things. Whether you have 5 clients or 500 clients, you want to act as if
Hmm.
you are the person that you are becoming, because that's how you get there. And one of those things is to completely separate your personal from your business finances, which means
Yeah.
you buy nothing for your personal life directly out of your business,
Yes.
and you buy nothing for your business. And I know there's there is perfection, and then there's the other end of the spectrum. And I would encourage you, depending on where you are, to take that next step. If they're completely commingled, what can you do to start separating out some of those bills? And I think the more you could separate those, the better you will do.
Yeah,
That's
I
one.
think that's really critical, Billy. I think you're so right. I think often and understandably, gyms often get started in people's backyards or
Hmm.
garages, or they're renting space at the local YMCA or other gym. And it makes sense that at first, since you're often the owner is often the first coach, it's all coming out of your checking account. It's all the same money, right? But over
Hmm.
time, you really have to separate out to start thinking strategically about the business separate from your personal life. So you're really clear. This is money that's mine that I can invest in and pay my bills with and buy things with. This is money that's the business's, that the business can invest in and buy things with. And you're right, that separation of church and state, is really important when it mingles for too long. It's really hard to be strategic. It's all just the same pot of money, and that's
Hmm.
confusing. Yeah, I love that one. What else? Anything else? I mean, thinking back to when you were first starting your gym, like what advice do you wish you would have had for managing your finances back then?
I think this is a hard one. It probably I don't think it should be a hard one, because we're in the business of helping people change their lives.
Yep.
And when you think about that, what does life change look like? And this is
Hmm.
an obvious thing. Does it look like a quick program that you do and you're all of a sudden completely transformed forever? No, we all know that. It is a process, it is a journey. But then when it comes to our own business, we're looking
Hmm.
for the huge grand slam or the huge
Yeah, the
promotion,
quick fix or the yeah.
yeah, when that's dressed up in different ways, whether it's get 100 clients and, with this ad or this or that. When I would encourage people to, yes, dream big, think big, but act small. And Richard Branson says that. And if there's anybody that
Hmm.
we should listen to, it's him, as far as growing a business. Act small. Don't act bigger than you are. Set those incremental goals and be patient, be disciplined, and be consistent. And if you are to do that over time, you'll be
Hmm.
amazed. It is
Yeah.
mind blowing, especially when we start getting into the finances and we start looking at compound interest. It is mind blowing how far you can go when you are consistent over time.
Yeah.
Everybody knows that, but it's
Well, I
doing
think,
it.
yeah, I think you're right, Billy. I think too often people just want, big swings and they want to fix
Mhm.
everything with one fell swoop. And I think you're right that, small hinges swing big doors, right, is another way of
Mhm.
thinking about it, right? And I think so. Let's just talk about what are maybe two or three of those little small habits in the beginning that you think really compound over time.
One of the things I think about, and this is, I'm not never smart enough to get this quote right, but it's Warren Buffett. He says something like, "Don't don't have all your expenses and pay yourself what's left.
Hmm.
Pay yourself, and then what's
Yeah.
left is for your
Kind of
expenses," right?
profit first approach, right? Yeah.
Yes, and I think we could do that at any level. Too many of us are looking for the one day when we're going to maybe sell our gym or be able to actually pay ourselves what we want. I work with gym owners who are a little bit further along, and sometimes that pattern is still there. They're
Mhm.
making hundreds of thousands of dollars, and they're still thinking of, I'm going to keep reinvesting so that eventually I could
Yeah.
pay myself. When we have to change that mindset and look at it as, I come first, because if I'm not taken care of, then nobody else is.
Yeah.
And then we work it around that. And that might sound like it's impossible, but it's only impossible if you think it is. When I started my business and I had all the debt, I had all the payments, I did it, I think, with a little bit of wisdom, in that I started off slow, like we talked about. I started off part-time. I subleased. I didn't take a big loan because I just wasn't in a position for that. I even was working another job as I was ramping up. And I decided that I was going to pay myself what I needed because I really had no choice. If I didn't
Hmm.
pay myself, my kids didn't eat. And that wasn't really a good option for me. I find that oftentimes when fitness entrepreneurs have the ability, or they think they have the ability to not pay themselves, they make the mistake of doing that. Maybe there's a partner or a spouse who's contributing. There's lots of reasons why. Maybe they tell themselves they're not worth it. I'm getting kind of deep here, right? But there's
Yeah, but
lots
those are
behind
real reasons.
why
Yeah,
people are doing this. Yeah, I've heard this many times. So I think making it your business, and even if it's not quite what you want, maybe you want to pay yourself X amount,
yeah,
you're just not quite there. You talked about that small hinge.
yes,
What is that for you? Maybe it's half of that or something, just to start seeing
yeah.
that it is possible. And another one is, most of us didn't get into business to do the accounting. I think it's never too soon to do that, whether that's learning how to read a P&L, looking at what's happening in your business to make decisions, and even forward thinking, that forward thinking P&L,
Hmm.
whether that's your budget or your cash flow projection, or even your your P&L when it comes to the service side, like your leads, your set rate, your show rate, your close rate, your retention rate, all those important numbers, paying attention to those things from day one, so that you don't have to worry about, now I'm bringing in tens of thousands of dollars and I don't know what's flying because I've never done this before. I think
Yeah.
you'll thank yourself later.
Yeah, I think those are both fantastic, Billy, and I think that that starts to paint a real picture of all the things you're putting together, right? You already said so many things, right? Have a vision for where you want to go,
Mm-hmm.
right? Make sure that your personal and professional bank accounts are separate. Make sure you get in the habit of paying yourself something, paying yourself first, maybe even using the profit first method, which we recommend with all of our Unicorn Society members and recommend to everyone in this audience. We talked about it many times. Great
Mm-hmm.
process for helping to put things away in the right piggy banks.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and then have some just basic financial literacy. It's so funny. Years ago, Mark and I knew we needed to step up our game when it came to learning about P&Ls and balance sheets and things, which I had learned in school before, but hadn't really thought about in a while. We literally just went to take a class. We took like an adult learning night class at NYU on
Awesome.
basic bookkeeping,
Mm-hmm.
and it was we did it together, so we both knew we were learning the same language and the same tools. Took a few weeks of nighttime learning, but it would really just refreshed and taught us some of the basics. And everyone has got a community college nearby where that's offering something similar. And also YouTube University is real, right? Everything you want to know is free and online. So I think really getting to learn some of those financial basics is really critical, so that when you go to hire a bookkeeper or an accountant, you at least speak enough of the language to know what it looks like for them to do a good job, and that's really important.
Hey
My,
there,
my,
Business of Unicorns podcast listeners. I'm just making absolutely sure you have already gotten your free, instantly downloadable copy of my new book, The Little Book of Gym Marketing Secrets. You can find a link to download it in the show notes, or you can go to gymmarketingsecretsbook.com. I worked super hard to make sure this is a less than a 30-minute read and is a comprehensive overview of all the things you need to do to grow your gym, get more leads, more clients, and importantly, change more lives. Again, find the link in the show notes where you can download your free copy at gymmarketingsecretsbook.com. And now back to the podcast.
Important.
Michael, I'm glad you said that. I'm really passionate about that last point you said.
Yeah.
And too many fitness entrepreneurs, or any entrepreneur, they give too much sort
Hmm.
of control
Yeah.
to their bookkeeper, to their accountant. Here's, if you remember nothing else from this conversation, remember that you are in charge of your money, you're in charge of your
Yep.
business, your CPA, your bookkeeper, your lawyer, all of them, they work for you. It could be a detrimental mistake to forget that
Hmm.
and just to put your
Yeah.
hands up and take your eyes off of it. I've heard disaster story after
Yes.
disaster story when people do that.
Yeah, 100%. I couldn't agree more. That's probably fodder for a whole nother podcast episode. So
Yeah.
we'll come back and
Hmm.
talk about disasters. So I want to turn my attention to the kind of second group I mentioned a few minutes
Yeah.
ago, which is people who've been in the game for a long time. They're in a different place.
Hmm.
They maybe have been running profit first for years and paying themselves. Maybe they've really started to accumulate some wealth, but they really want to take it to the next level. They're really planning for retirement. They're hoping to kind of step away from the business a little bit more. They've been working with us to put some processes in place where the business doesn't need them day to day, just like your gym doesn't need you day to day. And so, what are some things you have to share with folks who are in that part of their career?
I mean, I like the idea as we get further along, it part of it becomes not to get too woo woo, but it becomes a little bit more about self discovery. It becomes a little
Sure.
bit more about what you really want out of life. What is it, your mission? What is the legacy that you want to leave? So a lot of it is similar in that we still want to be creating a vision. We want to be
Yeah.
casting that vision, but there becomes a point where you're only going to go as far as you have grown. So Henry
Hmm.
Cloud says that. He says or John Maxwell says it's the law of the lid. You're not going to go past where you are, and that's usually the bottleneck, right? It's us, it's our mindset, it's what we
Yeah.
believe, it's these thoughts that are holding us back, and even our emotions and all those kinds of things. It's learning how to there's another quote by Jim Rohn that says, if you work on your business, you'll make a living, but if you work on yourself, you'll make a fortune. So I love
Hmm.
the idea of just continuing growing yourself, becoming the person that you're destined to be. And a lot of that is going to be about serving others, figuring out what you want to do when you've gotten to that point. Do you want to expand your business? Do you want to get into another business? Do you want to retire early so that you can put your time elsewhere? It's figuring out all of those things, and a lot of the same ways it is backing that out. I know you mentioned a lot of them are already investing, which is
Hmm.
awesome, but that's also a whole nother topic, and we could do a whole discussion on that. But it's looking at which investments are best for you in terms of the risk versus the reward versus the time it's going to take. Those are all important things to get a hold of, knowing your number, depending on your age and when you want that to happen, and are you on track for that number, and if not, what kind of tweaks can you make. It's leveraging other people as you grow and developing your leadership skills, because again, you're only going to go so far alone. But if you have others that are on that mission and vision with you, it's going to look a lot different.
Yeah, well, I think you're so right, Billy, because I think once folks have been in this industry for a long time and they have their eye on the horizon, that horizon can look very different for many people. Sometimes
Mm-hmm.
you're right, it's about early retirement. Sometimes it's about continuing to grow and expand the gym. Sometimes it's about handing off the gym to your team and selling it, or giving over some equity so you're not as needed anymore. There's so many paths you can take, and I think you're right that that's really the first step until you figure out really what you want next, either what you want your legacy to be or what you want the next 10 years to look like. It really
Yeah.
changes your strategy. I'll say this, that I think what most folks want that we talk to on a regular basis, this is painting with a very broad brush, right? This is,
Yeah.
I don't have any stats on this. This is just anecdotal, is really what they want is they do want to make sure they're saving for retirement and
Mm-hmm.
they want their business to kind of keep growing. So they want to make
Yeah.
sure that they're investing in themselves and they can retire at some point and take care of their family.
Yep.
And they do really have a deep-seated vision for their gym to kind of keep growing and expanding.
Nice.
So for
Yep.
folks like that, I mean, how do you juggle both goals, seemingly moving in different directions?
The one thing I like about that is that people can make the mistake of thinking that like happiness is somewhere else. We're getting really philosophical here,
Yeah, I
but
love
it's
it.
like, yeah, I've grown my gym, so now what's the next thing? It's like maybe the next thing is just to keep doing what you're doing, keep getting better,
Hmm.
keep getting 1% better, because that's the area that you're strong in. That's the area that you probably like. That's
Yeah.
the area that you can make the biggest difference in. I think it's things change. I remember talking to Mike Boyle about this a while back, and he's a little bit older, and he talks about how each decade is very different. And now I'm
Hmm.
experiencing that in my 40s. I started my gym in my very early 30s. I think I was 30 or 31, and my I was so different. Like I'm a different person
Hmm.
now. I was
Yeah.
that guy. I was running hard. I remember we were displaced because of one of the hurricanes back
Yep.
in New York. You remember? And we were staying at our in-laws, and I remember my wife's mother making a comment that like, "You're never home." I was like, I was leaving
Mm-hmm.
the house at like 5 something a.m. and getting back like way after dark. And now like I can't even remember the last time that's happened. I am home every single night and I'm home every single morning, and life is
Mm-hmm.
very different. I'm able to leverage time a little bit better. But thinking about the decade that you're in, when it comes to those relationships, you're only in, like, let's say you're a parent, you're only in that season during that time.
Yeah.
So you want to be careful not to, I think, go swing that pendulum too far, right? You could be the guy or gal that's always working and you miss out on any of those important relationships, or you could be the one that misses your mission at work because you're trying so hard with your relationships, right? So I think it's really paying attention to where you are in your journey and what you want that to look like. And I think Pat Lencioni talks about the idea that we have all these systems in place for our business. Like you and Mark, you guys, I'm assuming, you guys have all these meetings and you're talking about your goals and your rocks and this and that, and you're doing EOS, right? And then when we look at our personal life, we don't do any of that. And
Sure.
he argues that it should be the opposite. Like we need to treat that like a business so that we don't veer too far off course. And one more thing about the investing side, I think is important to share, and I think you'll agree with this, and
Sure.
I obviously want to know, and that is a lot of people, it's like this, I don't know what it is, it's this thing in us that always thinks there's something else out there,
Mm,
where when it comes to the investing side, because I'm in this world and I'm hearing this all the time, there's all these like really funky
of
things you
course.
can do. And people think that they're missing out because I don't know that strategy. And I've talked to Mark a
Mm,
little bit about this. And the truth is, that's all nonsense.
yeah.
In a lot of ways, what there's the book, What Got You Here won't get you there. But in a lot of ways, what got you here will get you there because you just need to keep doing what's working.
Sure.
Is it, think about that from a nutrition and a workout standpoint. Like I ate what I had this morning. I had a whey protein shake with a little bit of almond butter and a little bit of fruit. Like, is there something better than that I'm missing? Or is that like just a good breakfast, no matter if it's now or when I'm in better shape?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, you're right. I think so many of the financial greats, when it comes to investment, talk about just being excellent at the basics. They talk about
Mm-hmm.
index funds. They talk about things that are really long-term plays, and all those
Mm-hmm.
things that are about chasing tips and speculative ghost stories
Mm-hmm.
are the things that really send people off track and waste a lot of time and money. And so I think you're right that I think it's about figuring out what is your approach. Working with someone, if you need help doing this, working with someone who really understands what your approach is and is not going to be off kind of chasing every tip out there, right? That's going to be thoughtful
Exactly.
with your money. Yeah.
To that point, we're putting way too much attention on these things that are not the thing, right? And
Mm,
we're putting way too little attention on the things that are the thing. Like to you,
yeah.
like the point you talked
Yeah,
about
just
with
basic saving,
yep.
basic
Mm-hmm.
compound
Yep.
interest, right? Those kind of things is like those are the basics. If
Mm-hmm.
you're lucky enough to have any sort of like class in school that taught you about just the basics of how money and compound interest works, then that's those are the basics, and that works for most people long term. But it does require people to start early. It really benefits from time, and so if you're a few years from retirement, you might need to try some different stuff, right?
Yep.
Because you don't have the benefit of that time. But I think, your point here, I think, is really well taken, Billy, which is as you get later in your career, it's really important that you have a vision and a strategy for the kind of way that you want to spend your time, for what
Mm-hmm.
you need, how you need your money to perform,
Mm-hmm.
and you're really strategic about the habits that you embrace every single day to try and make that plan come alive. And it gets more and more important the closer you are to wanting to retire, wanting to sell the business, because selling a business that's working for you and putting money in your pocket as an owner is very different than selling a business that's optimized for someone who's going to buy it on your behalf. And so I think
Absolutely.
some of those things you have to really be strategic about based on what your vision is for your future.
Mm-hmm.
So let me do this. I know we're right up at the end of our time. But let's
Mm-hmm.
just do one last round of what else? Anything else that you have really worked for the clients you worked with that we haven't mentioned today in terms of just really optimizing people's margins, getting them some financial freedom? Any other kind of habits and tricks that we haven't mentioned today?
I think really paying attention to, I know you guys talk about this as well, but really paying attention to the important things. An example being your recurring revenue, really paying attention to that number. That's something that I've done for years now, and it's made a massive difference. There's something really, really comforting about that. There's a really good chance that X amount is coming through. I need to do a good job, take care of my clients, make sure that they're
Hmm.
staying, but I don't have to worry about like hustling so hard for new
Yeah.
sales every month. So paying attention to that number, paying attention to what's going out, both on the personal side and the business side, making sure that those expenses are working for you, and also that's a pendulum too. Like I've seen
Yeah.
people too scared to spend, and at some point you have to invest. You have to invest in a coach. You have to invest in marketing. You have to invest in the experience that your clients are getting. I would just as a little action step, rate yourself on that.
Hmm.
Where are you on that spectrum? Are you too far in the I'm spending a lot of money that's not really working for me? Am I on the other side where I am not spending enough because I'm scared? Maybe there's an underlying fear that I'm gonna,
Hmm.
be homeless if I invest in this thing. Or are you right where you need to be and you just need to continue with
Sure.
those behaviors? Those
Yeah.
are a couple of things come to mind, but I think at the end of the day, it comes down to intentionality,
Hmm.
being more proactive than reactive. Are you the type? Profit first is great because it gives you a system to sort of manage your cash flow, but at the same time, I like to be forward thinking. I want to look in the future. Where are we going to be next month, next quarter, next year? So you're looking at the rear view, which is your P&L and your other financial statements. You're looking at what you're doing right now, which maybe is like your profit first system. I like profit first and I follow it myself, but a lot of people they sort of go in and out of it. Like they're following
Yep.
it, then they have a bad month, and they stop doing it. They borrow from this
Yep.
account and they put it in this account. So if that's you, I'll give you some encouragement. It's okay. Like you have to have some compassion for yourself because yeah, things happen, and I am in a unique position where I see the financials of all types of people. And trust me, whatever you're going through is very normal and typical. But we also want to be looking ahead, planning ahead. If you do nothing else but project your cash flow over the next month or a few months and then make decisions to get where you need that cash flow to be, I think that'll be an absolute game changer for you.
Yeah, I love that. That's so great, Billy. I think those are great strategic steps that all of our listeners can take immediately to start to kind of realign how they're spending their time and energy and money. So I think that's super helpful. Well, this is awesome. We could probably keep going all day. There's a million things and tangents I would love
Yeah.
to go on with you, but I'm going to respect our time boundary here and just wrap up with this, which is like, what do you got going on? If people want to find out more about you, work with you, how do they find you? I mentioned yourfitnessmoneycoach.com is a place to go. Where else would you like them to visit?
Well, thanks for that. I just want to take this opportunity to thank you. It's such a great conversation. I truly hope this adds value. As far as what I have going on, it's pretty straightforward. A couple things that come to mind is I also have a podcast called Your Fitness Money Coach Podcast. I know we had Mark at least once, maybe twice on there, so you can check those out. Follow me and interact. Send me a message on Instagram. Would love to hear your thoughts, what you took away, or if you just want to share that when the episode is shared. I have a free book, which is more, it's personal and business, but it's more about the journey that I took. And I think there might be some
Hmm.
inspiration there. I do talk about the business side. I'm working currently on a book that's more focused on the business side. And then finally, I'll share a link where if anybody wants to book a time to share what you have going on, see if I could help point you in the right direction, I'd be thrilled to be able to do so.
I love that. I love that. So y'all go follow Billy on the Instagram, click the link down below to go download his book and book some time. Talk with him. Let him know what you got going on. And if he can be helpful, clearly he can, then you'll be in great hands. Well, thank you so much, Billy, for today. Thank you for your time. Thanks for your passion on this topic. So many great actionable steps. You definitely added a ton of value. So I really appreciate it. Thank you so much.
Thank you, sir.